Letting go always sounds simple, but it feels hard because we're caught in this quiet tug of war. Part of you is judging who you used to be, and part of you doesn't fully trust who you're becoming yet. And that's what makes it messy. All right. That's what makes it emotional. And that's what I call the identity gap. And until you close it, letting go will always feel harder than it should. And so if you're stuck in a space right now where your outer world no longer reflects your inner growth, this is for you. I want to show you what the identity gap really looks like and how you can start trusting yourself enough to let go. Now, the first time I noticed this gap for myself happened several years ago, before I ever thought about becoming a minimalist, leaving my job, or starting a business, before all of that. And back then, I was clinging to a version of myself that I had created over time. And I called him Mr. Smooth. In fact, everyone I knew called me Mr. Smooth. It was an identity that became my everyday reality. And from a freshman in high school to a senior in college, he was that guy who always had the right things to say. The guy who kept it cool, who was calm when everything was falling apart. You know, on the outside, he looked confident and composed, mysterious, like he had everything figured out. But on the inside, exhausted, tired of performing, always trying to stay one step ahead of being found out, if that makes sense. And so the more I hung on to that persona, the more I felt the pressure to live up to it. And so letting go of Mr. Smooth wasn't just about changing how I showed up. It was also about letting go of all the stuff, all the clutter that kept that identity alive. So the habits, the ego, the stories I kept telling myself, letting go of all of that was hard, right? I mean, anytime you try to let go of a persona, a version of yourself that you've clung to for nearly a decade, that's going to be hard, right? And that's because deep down, I didn't fully trust who I'd be without that identity, right? And you see, that's the thing about clutter, right? It's not just physical, it's emotional, it's mental. And a lot of the time, what we're holding on to isn't just the object or the behavior, it's the version of ourselves that it represents. And maybe that resonates with you, right? If it does, raise your hand in the comments or raise your hand to yourself. But it's the version of ourselves that it represents. And I'll give you another example. Just a few years ago, after I quit my corporate job to pursue something more meaningful, to build a business, to create the freedom to prioritize my values, I ran into that same feeling all over again, right? I was free. I had finally stepped away from a career that I spent 8 years building, but it took me months, and I mean months, to let go of all of my business casual clothing. The uniform that I wore for 8+ years at this particular job. And it was that way because I felt that it was safer for me to hold on to them, just in case. And so every morning that I got up to get dressed, I would filter past all of the clothes that I wasn't wearing to look for what I wanted to wear. And it felt like every time I did that, those items were telling me something. They were asking me a question that I was trying to avoid. Okay, well, are you sure you're ready for this? Well, what if it doesn't work out? Maybe you should hold on to us just a little bit longer, in case you fail, then that way you already have something to wear for an interview. It was all of these different things, right? And just like before, I found myself stuck between who I was and who I was becoming, right? And that's the identity gap. And the longer you live in that space, okay, hear me when I say this. This is a friend passing another friend some advice. The longer you live in that space, that identity gap, the more friction you feel in your life. See, the identity gap shows up when your outer world no longer reflects your inner growth. Like I said, when your space, your routine, your clothes, your habits, when they all represent a version of you that you've already outgrown. And that creates this weird, invisible tension, right? This feeling that you're out of sync with yourself, and you might not notice it right away. I didn't notice it in the beginning, but over time you start to feel it. And it shows up every time you walk past the stuff you haven't dealt with, the clothes or the objects you're holding on to from a past season or past chapter of your life. The unfinished projects from an old goal or an old dream that you had. everything that you told yourself you'll get to one day, but you haven't gotten to it. All of that represents or becomes a subtle reminder that you're caught between two identities. And that tension, right? That tension, it doesn't just slow you down, it drains you. It drains you emotionally, it drains your energy, it drains you physically. Now, here's the real reason letting go feels hard. And I've already hinted at this throughout this conversation. Maybe you've picked up on it already. If you have, comment below and let me know what you think it is. But it's not about stuff, right? It's about self-judgment and self-trust, right? You judge yourself for still holding on to certain things, but you don't trust yourself enough yet to let it go. And that's the tension that nobody talks about, right? That's what makes letting go feel harder than it should. So how do you move forward? One thing I teach my coaching clients is that letting go is more than a decision, right? Letting go is more than a decision. Sure, just making a decision to let go and moving on, that might work when we're talking about the surface level stuff. But if you've ever tried to let go of something that felt more meaningful, something that's tied to your identity, then you know that it's not that simple. All right. So letting go is more than a decision. It's a moment of honesty. And so you're not just saying, I don't need this anymore. What you're saying is, I trust who I'm becoming more than I fear losing who I was. And that's deep. That's what makes letting go powerful. And that's what closes the gap. All right. Now, if this is resonating with you and you're ready to start walking that path of acceptance and truth, comment the phrase, I'm ready. I'm ready. So I know that you're ready because I want to help you. I want to help you build that trust, to start trusting yourself more, to let go, to break that tension between self-judgment and self-trust, right? So how do you do that, right? What are the steps? How do you actually break that tension? Well, if you're in this space right now, like I said, where your outer world no longer reflects your inner growth, here's where I start. Don't ask yourself, what do you need to let go of? Instead, ask yourself this: what would I do if I fully trusted myself? What would I do if I fully trusted myself? Because here's the truth. You ready for this? You already know. You've already outgrown the version of you that's clinging to the clutter. You just haven't fully trusted the next version of you to take the lead yet. And I get it, right? Trust takes time. I didn't trust myself in the beginning, right? Talk about letting go of a persona, a version of myself, letting go of Mr. Smooth, someone I've known for a decade plus. When I decided to let go of that, I was like, whoa, what are you doing? This is who you are. So I thought. Everyone knows you by this. Are you sure that's the right decision? I didn't trust myself in the beginning when I decided to leave my corporate job, walk away from a consistent paycheck, walk away from healthcare and benefits, walk away from a 401k match, to walk away from a pension. How many companies nowadays are providing their employees with a pension? Not that many. I have a family. I have things to take care of. Are you sure this is the right decision? What are you doing? Right? I didn't trust myself in the beginning. Trust takes time, my friend. But it also grows, okay? Listen to this. It also grows with every decision you make that honors who you're becoming. All right? So here's something simple but powerful that I want you to try. 2 things. Write these down. Number 1, name one area of your life where you've already trusted yourself in the past. Okay, so just take a moment to think back. Think about some of those different moments, some of the different experiences that you had, and just name one where you've trusted yourself in the past. Maybe it was a decision you made that other people questioned, your parents or your peers that questioned it. Are you sure that's the right decision? Are you sure you know what you're doing? But you trusted yourself to make that decision anyway. Maybe it was a moment where you said yes to something new, or you said no to something that didn't really feel aligned with who you were. What are those moments? Name one. And whatever it is, just remember that moment, okay? Because it's proof that you've done it before, and it means that you can do it again, all right? And number 2, then I want you to ask yourself, what's one small action I can take today to honor who I'm becoming? Not to prove something to other people, right? Not to be perfect, but just one simple step. right? What's one thing you can take today, one action you can take today to honor the person you're becoming? And I think I talked about this last week with you, but the reason we want to do this is because clarity doesn't show up all at once. Things aren't going to be perfect in the beginning. You're not going to have the confidence right away in the beginning, but it grows every time you trust yourself enough to begin. Clarity shows up after you take the first step. Confidence shows up after you move. And that's how you start closing the identity gap, my friend, right? From the inside out. That's how you start closing this gap and trusting yourself enough to let go. Okay. So here's the bottom line. Growth feels strange. It's a weird thing to navigate sometimes. All right. Letting go feels tender. But this version of you, the one you're becoming, is worth it. It's worth it, my friend. And if you want help with this, you don't have to do it alone, right? I want to invite you to join my Declutter Breakthrough Challenge. This is a live 5-day experience where you will find clarity, build confidence, and create space for the life you want, physically, emotionally, even professionally, without guilt or overwhelm. Right now, I'm not teaching you how to throw things away or how to purchase pretty containers to organize your space. This challenge is about closing the gap between who you used to be and who you're ready to become. And if that sounds like something you need, I'll leave the link and all the details down below. The next challenge is starting very soon here. You know, it may have already started depending on when you're watching this, in which case you have to wait for the next one. But I'll leave the link down below. You can register and you'll be the first to know when the next dates are. All right. Thanks for hanging out with me today, my friend. Always remember to stay true to you. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.